Hey, this is the Sales Hunter podcast. I'm Mark Hunter. Well, of course you know that. Hey, who's the other guy? It's Paul Reilly. We got Paul Reilly in the studio today. We're going to have a great conversation. Paul, why don't you say hi?
Mark, how's it going, man? I'm
Okay.
thrilled to be here today with you.
That's enough, because, hey, you know what let's do? Let's roll the video and let's get into the show itself. How's that sound? Sound good?
Sounds great. Sounds good.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
That was quick. That was fast. Okay, Paul Reilly. Hey, welcome. So now, hey, you got right behind you. For those of you who are watching live, you see his book, Selling. It's not selling in tough. I love this title. Not selling in tough times. It's selling through tough times.
Yep. That was
Talk
intentional.
to us.
Oh man.
Talk to us. Because that was very intentional.
It is very intentional. When you think about the word in for me was too definitive, right? When we talk about selling in tough times, and one of the big themes throughout the book is that tough times are temporary. So what's a better word that could encapsulate that? And through was a much better word to use. Selling through tough times, but also you think about being in a tough time or going through a tough time. Tough times also create new opportunities. So we're kind of playing on that a little bit as well. But yeah, through versus in. I had some debate on that one too, actually, with a couple of the folks that I mentioned it to.
Well, I tell you what, see, I love the word through because to me, that's being an optimist.
Absolutely.
See, because, being in and hey, Bonnie, good morning, because it's still morning for you out there on the West Coast. Well, it's just afternoon, so great to have you. And I know you, Bonnie, talk about being an optimist because, again, selling through tough times. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's be candid. Is this like year 3 of this thing called COVID? I mean, it's bizarre.
It is crazy, Mark. You'll get a kick out of this, right? So right now, sales kickoff season. I was talking to a sales leader the other day. He said, Paul, I want you to spend some time talking about what's changed, since COVID and now that we're through COVID. And I said, man, we're not through it yet. We're still in it.
But again, though, now think about that because it's everybody's interpretation. It's everybody's perception. It's the narrative. It's the narrative of how people choose to look at things.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, you're right, because different areas of the country, different areas of the world. This morning or today, I've had 2 calls with people, one in the UK and one in Germany. And they have different outlooks than we do here in the U.S. And even within the U.S., we're all over the place.
Right.
So when you look back over the last couple of years, what do you see as? And we've all talked about the differences in sales, but what's the lesson that we're learning that is going to help us going forward?
Wow, what a great question. You think about maybe the one thing I firmly believe that whether it's pre-COVID, whether we're during COVID, post-COVID, whether it's a recession, whether it's good times, whether it's bad times, customers and prospects want value. That is consistent. It is absolutely consistent, and that will remain. Now, how they define value may be different during a tough time, maybe during an uncertain time, but customers and prospects want value. And I don't see that ever going away. I think that sometimes we make too much to do about virtual selling, in-person selling, selling over the phone. Ever since we've been using these, we've been selling virtually. So it's not anything really new. I feel the principles are the same. The basics are the same, and customers still want value. But I do believe that salespeople have become more resilient over the past few years. Mark, you have had a great career as a sales professional. You've also sold through recessions yourself. You've been in business during inflationary times. You've built a strong foundation of resilience. Over the past few years, we have a whole group of new young sales professionals who really are going through a tough time for the first time. And so now they're starting to realize what they're really made of, how deep they can dig to find that strength, because sometimes we only tap into that strength when we're forced to do it. And that's one of the things I think will emerge from this stronger. Salespeople have a firmer, resilient foundation to stand on.
You hit on something so key. I mean, with the turnover that there's approximately a 30% turnover in sales positions every year. Now, that isn't 30% new people coming into sales, but it's about 15%, because about of the 30% turnover, about half ultimately do leave the sales profession.
Right.
But here's what I find very interesting, and you hit it. You kind of got to go through some fire before you really know how much you can get burned. And think about it, because I mean, we had pre-COVID, we were on the verge of almost 10 years of economic growth. 10
That's
years
right.
of economic growth. And like, what the heck, and as a result, we can become kind of sloppy and lazy.
Yep.
Here's an observation that I've found. When we're in difficult times, value takes on a shorter time frame. In other words, people want to realize value now.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, okay, if this materializes over the next year or two, that's fine. 5 years, fine. But it's now. Are you seeing that same thing?
Yeah. And I see it. And what happens, Mark, is during tough times or uncertain times, whatever it may be, buyers, decision makers, they do fill with fear. They have a fear-based mindset. They think about all the uncertainty. And what happens is what they have to sacrifice today begins to weigh heavier on them than what they potentially will gain in the future. They will naturally adopt a shorter time frame, a shorter window to view. And the value that you deliver, you've got to deliver value sooner. Because I imagine, like many of your clients, many of the people listening and watching us today, most of the value that they will deliver happens long term. It could be a year or two down the road when they fully experience your solution. You're absolutely right. That time horizon, it shrinks a little bit. So that means salespeople have to demonstrate more value sooner in the process. I agree with you 100%.
And I love how you frame that up, because there's something very special about tough times.
Mhm.
Because when I think tough times, it creates actually more opportunities for salespeople.
Yeah.
I firmly believe
Mhm.
tough times, because if times are easy, and this is where I think sales community got lazy.
Mhm.
We had 10 years of economic growth. Salespeople got lazy, and as a result, they just became order takers. Now
Mhm.
suddenly it's like, uh-oh. Um, you really have to sell a value. Here's a great comment. Agree. Value now is key. One day not acceptable. Oh, that whole, well, one day you're going to be able to achieve this. No, they want
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
concrete results now.
Yep.
And yeah. So if I'm a salesperson, how
Yeah.
do I go about demonstrating that? How do I go about talking that? Because again, I got to be able to show the customer. The customer's sitting there saying, I think you might be the solution, but I'm not sure. How do I get them over that hurdle?
Yeah. The number one thing you can do is stretch their time horizon into the future. What we got to do is we got to generate a discussion that is into the future, and by that I mean ask long-term questions. So, Mark, if you're the prospect and I'm talking to you, I might frame it up by saying, Mark, let's look a year or two down the road. All right, when things pick back up, when things are back to relatively normal, what would cause you to say, you know what, I'm really glad that I decided to partner with you on this project. And what you're doing is you're getting them thinking into a future which is better than the present. The other thing you can do is you can stretch their time horizon backwards, right? If the present is too depressing to think about, right? Get them back to the past or to the future, and maybe even draw a parallel to a previous downturn. For example, let's say we're talking to a business owner and we say, I know the Great Recession was 10 years ago, but looking back at the Great Recession and thinking about how much your business has grown over the past decade since that moment, what were some of the strategic decisions you made back then to better position yourself? And then you can simply draw a parallel to saying, well, right now we're facing tough times as well. What can we do today that's going to help you be better positioned once we get through this tough time? So
Oh,
you
yeah.
draw parallels to the past, to the future, And it gets them thinking past today into a better spot, really.
Well, we'll say that you're trying to get them to think longer term, and then the customer says, "Okay, why don't you check back with me in a year? Check back with me in 6 months."
Yeah.
How do we overcome that one?
Check back with me in 6 months. It is funny how the time frame, right? Where do they come up with this number? 6 months, a year from now, they're just throwing out a number, right? And we know how this goes. You're getting blown off, right? Most salespeople, and this is really just from what I've seen, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Most salespeople get kicked down the road, or they get asked to follow up 6 months or a year from now because they haven't demonstrated enough value today. They haven't created enough value. They haven't given that buyer a reason to at least want to stay in touch with you. I've got there was an executive I was working with. This guy grew up in sales for this company. It's an industrial coatings company. And one of the things he would do when customers would tell him, "Yeah, check with me 6 months, a year from now," he goes, "If an opportunity comes up, can I reach out to you sooner?" And what he would do is he would sell to contractors working in these big industrial facilities. He would then talk to the industrial facility and ask them, "What projects you have coming up?" And then he would take that information and go back to his customers and say, "Look, they've got a project coming up. You should go get in line. Talk to the engineering manager, talk to the project turnaround folks." He would bring opportunities to his customer. And whenever he was walking in the door, they welcomed him with open arms. And so that's a salesperson that created value.
And they've created immediate value for the prospect.
Yep.
And you know what I like about that is it's value that goes beyond what they sell.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And if you think about it, that's how you are no longer seen as a vendor. One of the challenges that I find is in tough times, I see so many salespeople kind of ratcheting it down to price.
Sure.
Price. I was just on the phone with a sales manager who was complaining about one of her salespeople that was totally focused on price.
Right.
And when you run out of arrows in the quiver, it's amazing how we revert to price.
Sure.
And I think it's because the salesperson didn't bother to find out enough from the customer to know what arrows to put into their quiver.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That price becomes that, it's the lowest common denominator, right? When we're making a decision. And during tough times, even though, the economy is doing okay right now, it's not.
It is doing well. It is really doing well.
Yeah.
Right.
But what will happen, and this dates back to like our caveman days, right? When we face an uncertain future or there's uncertainty, people like to hoard their resources. That's why we harvest in the summer so that we can make it through the winter. So what's happening now is I do see some companies are becoming more price sensitive because they're trying to conserve their cash and hoard resources. Salespeople misconstrued this as a price objection. And what they're really facing is a cost objection. It's not about lowering the price. It's about lowering overall cost. It's not necessarily about giving them a cheaper price. It's helping them make more money. That's the easiest way to get past a price objection, is to show your customer how you can help them make more of the resource that they're afraid of losing, which is money, right? So that's part of it. It's getting
Preach it.
That.
Preach it, Paul. Preach it.
Hey,
because I mean,
man, it's Friday.
I know, but I love this because
Yeah.
salespeople revert to price.
Yeah.
When they believe the customer is just buying. The customer is never buying. The customer is investing. And we cannot. I had a situation the other day, and this was a major proposal I sent over, and there was a price associated with it. And they came back to me and they wanted to change the price. And I immediately pushed back. And my feeling was, based on what you've told me, we don't have an opportunity to change the price because the opportunities are so great. In other words, this was, I focused it, I framed it up 100% as investment spending. And the prize that you're going to have by working with me is so significant that you can't short circuit that. And it's interesting. He came back to me and said, "That's spot on."
Yeah.
And the idea of discounting went totally off the table. It went totally off the table because I knew what the issues were that the company's dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our focus has to be. Yeah.
And we can't shortchange that. It is interesting, Mark, because I get discount requests fairly often, and you do as well.
We all do, right?
Yeah, and we teach salespeople not to do that. In fact, and the volume discount piece too. You've had this with your clients when they want to do more work with you and they feel like they deserve a discount. My response is always, you know what? Is it fair to say that the more salespeople are using our techniques, the more successful they're going to be, the more successful your company's going to be? And they say, well, yeah, of course. I say, okay, I won't charge you extra for the extra value that you're going to receive. I'll just give you my regular rate. Yeah. And then we usually laugh. And
drop the mic on that moment. Drop the mic. That is outstanding. It is so funny, but that comes back to another fundamental belief that so many salespeople don't believe in what they sell.
Yeah,
they do not. If you don't believe in what you sell, and actually, it's not so much believing in what you sell; it's believing in the outcome you create.
Oh,
and
that's the mic drop right there, Mark.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what is the outcome the customer is going to receive from using your product or service? That's what it comes down to. Absolutely. I mean, it's no different. This is what I tell people. It's no different than when you're hiring an employee. Mm-hmm. Why are you paying somebody minimum wage and somebody else you're paying 10 times minimum wage? Well, I expect more out of that person. Well, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And if you don't get it, you're right. But that's what I'm gonna get. Yeah. And we have to play to that value wage. But let's come back to this whole piece. And let's come back to your book, because Selling Through Tough Times, you've got a number of great sections in that book. What's one that jumps out at you? And you say, okay, people, when you buy the book, when you read the book, pay attention to what?
Yeah. Two jump to mind. I can't think of just one. The first chapter, when we're introducing to what tough times are, really, actually, it's the introduction to the book. There's a statement, a pretty bold statement that leads off the book, and that is, tough times are good. Tough times are good. That's one of those gut check statements. And the reason why tough times are good is because it will spark positive change in your life. It will, you think about it, Mark, without tough times, the world as we know it today would not exist. The relationships we have would not exist. But tough times, yeah, they're painful, but they are good. And there's so much more to help prove that point, and it's reiterated throughout the book. But then the last chapter, the final thoughts on salespeople, what they're facing right now, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally, it is. I have to say, I read that chapter still to this day, and it gives me chills. And that may be just my ego, right? Because it's one of my favorite pieces, and it's those words, but it draws from a lot of different areas of my life where we talk about remaining hopeful, and it's such a powerful message to end with. And rarely would I say, skip ahead to the last chapter of the book, but if you want to read the first introduction and then the last chapter, it's not gonna spoil the rest of the book. At least I'll tell you that.
Wow, that's very good. Again, you made a comment there, and I tell this to salespeople all the time, and I know you do too. Salespeople have to think long term. Yeah. It is so easy to get caught up in, today sucks, this week sucks, I'm not getting a deal. You have to look long term.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, but I was asked one time what my 25-year goals are. Think about that. What are your 25-year goals?
Wow.
But you stop and think about that. And ever since I've been asked that, I've really been on a mission. And I talk about this a lot now. What are your, but I think what it does is it changes your perspective.
It does.
In terms of how you look at customers, how you look at your business. It's not an excuse that you can back off today. No, it's almost gives you jet fuel to go even faster today.
Jet fuel and Red Bull mixed together.
Yeah, well, yeah, jet fuel and Red Bull. There's a combination for you.
Yeah.
But you stop and think about that. But selling through tough times, because the challenge we have is as salespeople, we're bouncing into customers, and again, there are segments of the industry that are segments of the economy that are just on fire,
Right.
and there are other segments that are very much struggling. And
Absolutely.
depending on where you're selling, depending on who you're selling to,
Yeah.
you have to be prepared to go both ways. So here's a question I got for you. What does the salesperson need to do to get ready to sell through tough times? In other words, it's tough times right now.
Right.
What should I be doing as a salesperson?
My first tip, before you get your skills right, you need to get your head right. Mentally preparing for this environment is absolutely critical. And you speak to this too in A Mind for Sales in your book, which is fabulous. But having the right mindset and mentally preparing yourself. So what that means is that we call it positive mental programming in how to sell through selling through tough times. And the whole idea is to minimize the damage that you're doing to yourself while building a strong mental foundation. So there's a collection of tips, things that I would encourage you to check out in the book. But one of the things that we should stop doing right away is internalizing our failure. All right. In the book, I pose a question to the reader. That question is, who do you blame when you fail? And it's not designed to segue into some self-help, look in the mirror. You own your failures just like you own your successes. During tough times, you could be doing more harm than good by internalizing your failure, because it's really not all your fault. I was talking to a client of mine today. Their salespeople have orders lined up. They don't have product that they can sell. That's not the salesperson's fault.
Right.
Right. We got to acknowledge that there's things going on outside of our control. We acknowledge it. We don't accept it as permanent reality, but stop internalizing your failure completely. If you look at it, you may be to blame for 20% of your failures that are happening right now. Control the 20% that you can control. Try not to lose sleep over the other 80%. Stop internalizing failure and stop feeling sorry for yourself too, though. That self-pity is a big portion of one of the things, or one of the aspects of building resilience, in the sense we need to stop doing it. We hear this where salespeople feel sorry for themselves. Here's a gut check question for every salesperson listening and sales leader, even business person. When's the last time you felt better after feeling sorry for yourself? Never.
Ooh.
When's the last time you actually felt better when you felt sorry for yourself? It doesn't happen. So we just need to stop doing it. It's easier said than done. But once you're aware of it, then you can look past it, right?
Yeah. Hey, we've been talking with Paul Reilly, author of the book Selling Through Tough Times. Now, don't go away here, because we've got the After the Show coming up here in a bit. But Paul, what's the best way for people to get the book? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So you can get Selling Through Tough Times anywhere you get books. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Chapters, Porchlight Books, wherever you get books. And then there's several complimentary resources on the website, toughtimer.com. You can actually download 3 of the chapters at that website. So check out toughtimer.com. Everything you need is right there to get started with it.
I love it. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, my company is called Tom Reilly Training. So you can reach out to us. We're a sales training organization. Much like you, Mark, I do a lot of keynote speeches as well. So you can visit my training website. You can get an idea of what we do and how we do it. It's tomreillytraining.com.
Great. Hey, stick around for the After the Show. Not only you, but the listening audience. So, hey, let's roll the video. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter Podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity.
You see, there's the whole situation that if you're going to play the audio with the audio, shut up, don't talk. Hey, thank you. This is great having you on. This is the first time we've ever done a podcast together. It's great.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now, hey, I got it, because we only got a couple minutes here. But and this is after the show, so we can talk about anything. But you were just up in Alaska.
Oh yeah, up in Alaska. Yeah.
Yeah. And you learned a few of those terms. You probably learned the term outside, right?
I did not hear that term. Educate me.
Well, when you live in Alaska and you say you're going outside, what that means is you're going down to the 48. You're going down to the 48 states. Yeah.
Ah.
And so anyway, it's a so you were in Anchorage, right?
Yep. I was in Anchorage with company Alaska Industrial Hardware. Great company. I was floored at just how they run their business. Their dedication to their customers is unparalleled. Even, it's one of those companies where, you put them in like your top 10 of, if you ever were going to work for someone, just the way they take care of their employees, their customers, so aligned with how we go out and teach people to sell. Great company.
And what a challenge, because when you're in Alaska, you're dependent on the boat for everything. I mean, the boat. When is that container going to get here, right?
Absolutely. And it brings cold to a whole new level. All right.
Yeah.
Whole new level.
Yeah. When I lived in Alaska, there were 6 of us living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay. We were all single. It was like broke. And we had to plug our cars in, because you plug your cars in at night. For those of you in warm climates, you have no clue what I'm talking about here, but you have a deadbolt heater or headbolt heater for your engine. And the last person in at night would literally just leave their car running. You would literally leave your car running, because we could only plug in 2 cars.
Yeah.
And then as we would get up and leave for work, we would jockey the cars around to try to keep, 2 cars plugged in. But if you were the last car or 2 in, you just left it running. I had a Volkswagen Bug at the time. And I literally, and Volkswagen Bugs had no heaters back in those days. You had to have gloves to touch the steering wheel, because otherwise you left your fingers behind.
So you didn't lick the steering wheel like a metal glove.
And I would literally have to scrape the inside of the window, because you're just talking, breathing.
Yeah.
The moisture would freeze up on the inside. I literally have to scrape the inside of my windshield to be able to see.
That's unbelievable.
Crazy times. But
I'll tell you, I had a great steak while I was up there.
Oh, hey, I'll tell you what.
Club Paris. Did you ever go there?
No.
Oh, it's like an old school steakhouse. The motif is, it's kind of like it looks like a hole in the wall on the inside. But it's got a great menu. Really, it's a charming restaurant. Great experience as well.
That's neat. Hey, listen, we have got to run, but we've been talking with Paul Reilly. This is the Sales Hunter podcast. Always great having guests on. If you like the show, hey, rate and review it, and tell a friend, because really it's the only way we grow is by people talking to other people. So, Paul, thanks for being a guest. Very much appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And we will see you on the Sales Hunter podcast. Great selling.